Ready. Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. It is late afternoon, early evening where Steve is. In fact, in the UK, where you are, Steve, this would be tea o'clock. I don't know how popular drinking tea is in the US compared to the UK, but drinking tea at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or evening is a sort of a go-to thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I am. I spent some time. I lived over there for a while with my father when I was much younger in London, so I'm very familiar. Plus, all the times I've seen the people in the Royal Box leaving at 4 p.m., isn't it?
Yeah, well, 4 p.m. maybe. And it's always the European. Yes, that's true. In cricket, I think it's a 4 o'clock thing. But around Europe, they all talk about the Brits having tea at 5 o'clock. But
Okay.
listen, was your father a tennis fan too?
Yes. Yeah, he was. He really kind of spurred my interest on. He loved playing. He loved to play, so he inspired me in that way. But then he took me out to Wimbledon when I was 12, just about to turn 13, and he always loved it. And he died a couple of years ago, but it was something we talked about constantly on the phone. And he'd come out to the U.S. Open with me at least one day every year. Yes, he had a lot to do with where I am.
Great. I understand completely. Let's get to the present day, or the present couple of days that are ahead of us, because
Sure.
we've got two men's quarterfinals for us to discuss now, having seen them win their matches last night. Let's begin with Jannik Sinner against Alex de Minaur. This is a matchup we've seen quite a few times in recent years, particularly with Alex's rise through the rankings. He's now mixing with the big boys more often than not. And he's going to be playing Jannik Sinner, a familiar foe. We'll get into the head-to-head shortly, but what have you made of Jannik's progression to the quarterfinals? Straight sets wins over Jarry and Giron in the first and third rounds, dropping a set to Schoolkate. That may well have surprised a few. And then obviously the most recent encounter he had with Holger Rune.
Yeah, I mean, the Jarry one wasn't easy. You're right about he didn't lose a set there, but a couple of tie breaks. That was hard fought. And he knew he could have lost either of the first two sets. He was very honest about that. It hasn't been quite the same efficient Sinner we saw in the earlier rounds last year for a variety of reasons. I thought he handled a difficult situation well against Holger Rune there in the round of 16, though, John, because he obviously was dizzy and not feeling well, and they had to go to the locker room with the doctors, and something was way off there. But he just impresses me. He's so disciplined and determined and composed and you could see how wobbly he was, but I felt like his professionalism kicked in, as it almost always does. So I'd give him pretty high marks, but I think he's looking to take it up a notch. There hasn't been one match where I thought he's been in total command of his powers. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think what I would say is it's been a bit wobbly, and I think if he'd have come up against a super confident Holger Rune from maybe 2 years ago, or maybe had a slightly more challenging second and third rounds. I think Jarry in the first round was tricky enough, especially at that stage. He might have been punished a bit more. That's not to suggest that I would have seen him go out, but we might have seen him be pushed to 5 sets had he had a slightly trickier path. So I do think you're right. We're not, yesterday I used the word serene for Zverev's path to the quarterfinals. I wouldn't call it serene with Jannik, even though he's only dropped 2 sets en route, which is fine. But yeah, I don't think we're seeing quite the level, but I don't really fear anything. I'm not worried about it. It's not like I'm seeing his performances that far down that I still don't think he's got an excellent chance of retaining his title.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that impresses me the most about him is the breakpoint serving. He's just a great server, period, now. But I just have a lot of faith in him now when I see him get breakpoint down. That was not the case until this past year. Not before the end of 23 did I see that quality in him. Now I do. So on a day like yesterday, when he wasn't feeling well and the rest of his game was a little bit off and Holger was really challenging him from the baseline, the serve bailed him out big time.
Yeah, it's something he can lean on, and I think that was a big transformation from where he was in 23 to then obviously that sensational year he had last year. Alex de Minaur, his path to the quarterfinals, not too bad as well, just losing 1 set en route to Cerundolo, of course. he beat Mickelson in his most recent encounter, including a bagel in the first set. Mickelson having a great tournament, by the way. I think fourth round for him, including a win over Tsitsipas, is excellent progress for the young American. And, his time will come. But for now, it's Alex de Minaur. And yeah, I mean, actually, it's kind of, I know it's de Minaur's first quarterfinals, but this is a real step forward for de Minaur once again. His first Aussie Open quarterfinal. We're almost expecting him to go deep now, fourth rounds, quarterfinals. He'll probably be year-end number, top 10, and probably be making that ATP Tour Finals again. At least that's where he'll be, there or thereabouts, which is hats off to him. What have you made about his progress?
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive. Listen, I have a lot of respect for him and the way he goes about his business, and he's solid as a rock, and he's a tough competitor now, very resilient. What worries me going into this match, though, is I don't like the matchup. I don't like it at all for him against Sinner. I think if you really got him telling you the truth behind the scenes off the record, he would tell you, and not that he by any means thinks he's a good bet to beat Carlos, but he'd rather play Carlos. His game, he can extract errors from Carlos. I think that's a matchup where at least he maybe catches Carlos on an off day and he maybe wins. I just don't see it with Sinner. I just think that Sinner, the styles are too similar, and Sinner does it better. And so not only does Sinner have that edge with the serve, John, but I just feel like he's in control from the baseline. Now the crowd maybe helps. It's in Australia. I get all that, but I'd be surprised if Alex takes a set. I'm very happy to see it for the sake of the fans and for the intrigue of the match, but I'm kind of leaning against him getting a set.
Yeah, I mean, Jannik can drop sets elsewhere to other players on the tour, as we've seen en route to the quarterfinal. And yet that thing that you just said about Alex and doing everything but not quite as well as Jannik, particularly in the serve department, is something that I think has been echoed by myself and others as well over the last 12 months, as we've seen them play so frequently. I mean, by the way, I'm sharing this head-to-head of 9-0. I mean, it's pretty brutal. Two players that are both now inside the top 10.
It is. And I'm sure that he's given it a lot of thought. I'm sure he's trying to try to do something new, but I just don't see what kind of formula he comes up with that's going to work, that Sinner's not going to have the answer for it. On the other hand, let's see how involved the crowd gets. Let's see how inspired he gets. He certainly won't lose for lack of trying. I mean, he's a fierce competitor. So, but I just believe that Sinner, I mean, contrary to Rune, who always gives him problems, and he's beaten him a couple of times, and the matches always go the distance, except for this one went 4. But he's always in there with him, and I can see why, with the risks that he takes and the way he tries a lot of different things, there are variations, and he's got a lot of power and a lot of variety, and it can sometimes throw Jannik off stride. I don't see that happening with Alex, but look, I'd love to be wrong. I want to see, like you, I'm sure, I want it to be close. One way or another, I want it close, but I'm not expecting it to be.
Yeah, I mean, Holger has that little bit of unpredictability, I think, that maybe Alex doesn't quite have, in both a good way and a bad way, in that Holger maybe as well can maybe have a few more surprising defeats than Alex right now, who's a model of consistency. I remember seeing de Minaur play Sinner at the Davis Cup, so I was there in the flesh in 2023.
Yeah.
And actually, de Minaur played really well throughout that tournament. And I didn't really think he was going to do too much damage to Jannik in the final, as it turned out. But actually losing just three games across those two sets was pretty brutal and sums up their rivalry, if it even is a rivalry.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other problem he's going to have is that Sinner, I mentioned the crowd, Sinner will be very aware of that and looking to quiet the crowd by just taking control of the match. And therefore, I think he's going to be really off and running. I expect him to really be pushing hard for an early break and just take a lead and build on it. But listen, let's see. I mean, it's not easy to go out there against the guy with an 0-9 record and figure out what's going to work, what turns it around this time, other than the fact that at least he's playing for a home crowd.
I mean, just all I could suggest is maybe try and redline a bit more than you previously have. Take a few more risks, especially on the second serve, but especially, mid-rally as well, which is probably going to go the way to Jannik from a neutral position. Maybe as well, having redlined and got away with it a little bit in the opening exchanges, maybe you can go up a break, because if it's like first set Jannik, maybe even on a tie break, because I can just see Jannik holding and, you know, maybe Alex hangs in there for a set. But if it's like a set and a break in favor of Jannik, well, most of us will be casting our eyes at other matches, you know, around Melbourne.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I worry, John, about the red. When you say the red line, I agree. It's something that's well worth considering for him. I just worry about him there starting him. He's the kind of player that hates making mistakes too, and the danger of that strategy is he does start missing a bit. So he has to determine the best times to attempt that type of play. But you're right in the sense that if he doesn't go down that path, then where is he going?
yeah. True. I mean, actually, this brings me to an amateur conversation I had, or conversation between me and another guy who were playing. And he just sort of asked me, what should I do on the next point or the next game? And I said, listen, this is my basic rule of thumb, Steve, and I don't know how you feel about this. If you're better than your opponent, okay, play your normal game, okay? If your things are going well, you're beating them on a regular basis and everything's going your way, and even if it's just a 60-40 balance, we know that winning 50 or 55%, so I should say probably, of your points means you're going to win a lot of titles, as Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal know only too well. However, if things are not going well, such as this 9-0 head-to-head, such as looking at the scenario, you know, you're struggling to make an impression on the serve and neutral rallies are not going your way, you've got to do something different. And if that means taking more risks, so be it. And if that means losing 6-1, 6-2, 6-1, so be it, you know, because there's no point losing 4-4 and 4.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And I hope that's the way he's looking at it. We're going to find out, and it won't be long before we do find out. But I share your philosophy.
All right, let's move over. Oh, before we do, I need to, although I think we're probably both going to go with the same. Go on, Steve. What are you going to go for this first quarterfinal?
Yeah, Sinner. I'll say Sinner 3-4 and 3.
Yeah, I'm going to go Sinner straight sets. Yeah, probably with there might be a tiebreaker in there and a couple of close-ish sets. But yes, I'm going to go with Jannik as well to maintain that 100% record against the Australian. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.